The bathroom door was cracked, just enough for me to hear everything. Sophie's voice, high and breathless with laughter, cut through the humid air like a razor. "Hope his brother drops by tomorrow night," she giggled to her friends. "I shaved everywhere for him." The chorus of female laughter that followed hit me like a punch to the gut. I stood there in our bedroom, holding a wrench I'd been using to fix the squeaky dresser drawer, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Marriage, I thought, is like a bad horror movie, except you can't walk out during the credits. "Jack's working late again anyway," Sophie continued, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. "He'll never know." Liz's voice chimed in next, sharp and encouraging. "Girl, you deserve this. Tyler's been waiting for months." Tyler. The name hit me like ice water. Tyler Grant, the real estate hotshot with the BMW and the perfect teeth. The guy who'd been sniffing around Sophie at every town event for the past year. I set the wrench down carefully on the nightstand and walked to the bedroom window. Outside, our neighbor Marge was watering her garden in the fading light, probably straining to hear whatever drama was unfolding in the Harlan house. In a town like Derry, everyone knew everyone's business, except, apparently, the husbands. "Nina, are you getting this?" Sophie's voice again, followed by the familiar sound of a phone camera clicking. "Oh, honey, I'm documenting everything," Nina replied. "This is going straight to my story. The girls need to see how a real woman handles her needs." I walked to Sophie's dresser and began methodically packing her makeup into a small cardboard box. Her expensive foundation, the lipstick she only wore for special occasions, the perfume I'd bought her for Christmas that she claimed to love but never wore around me. Each item went into the box with deliberate care. The laughter from the bathroom grew louder. They were sharing details now, dirty, explicit details about what Sophie planned to do with Tyler tomorrow night, while I was supposedly working late at the shop. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd been planning to come home early, maybe surprise her with dinner from that Italian place she liked. I moved to her side of the closet next. The black dress she'd worn to our anniversary dinner last month, the one where she'd spent the entire evening texting someone she claimed was a client. The red lingerie. Their laughter made my jaw clench. I carried both boxes to the front door and set them down carefully. Then I walked to the kitchen and opened a beer. The first sip was bitter, but not as bitter as the taste of betrayal. My phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Mick, my old Marine buddy who now worked security downtown. "Drinks tonight? You look like you need it." I stared at the message. Mick always had an uncanny ability to sense when something was wrong. Maybe it was the way I'd been walking lately, or the fact that I'd been working later and later at the shop, avoiding coming home to a wife who was clearly avoiding me. The bathroom door finally opened, and Sophie emerged with her friends, all three of them glowing with the kind of excitement that comes from planning something forbidden. They were dressed for a night out, short skirts, low-cut tops, the kind of outfits that said they were hunting. "Oh, Jack," Sophie said when she saw me in the kitchen. Her voice was artificially bright, the tone she used when she was lying. "I didn't know you were home." "Just got here," I replied, taking another sip of my beer. "Heard you ladies having a good time?" Liz and Nina exchanged glances. They were both attractive women in their early 30s, the kind who'd never quite gotten over being the popular girls in high school. Liz was a real estate agent, Tyler's colleague, I realized now, and Nina worked at the bank, where she had access to everyone's financial business and wasn't shy about sharing it. "We were just planning girls' night," Sophie said, moving to the refrigerator and pulling out a bottle of wine. "You know how it is." "Sure," I said. "Book club, right?" The slight pause before she answered told me everything I needed to know. "Right. We're reading that new romance novel everyone's talking about." "The one with the cheating wife?" I asked innocently. Nina choked on her wine. Liz's eyes went wide. Sophie's face flushed red, but she recovered quickly. "It's about second chances," she said firmly. "About people finding happiness." "Happiness," I repeated. "That's important in a marriage, don't you think?" "Absolutely," Sophie said, but her eyes wouldn't meet mine. I finished my beer, tools in their proper places, projects sorted by priority, everything clean and functional. It was the opposite of the chaos that had apparently taken over my marriage. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through Sophie's social media. She'd been posting more frequently lately, lots of photos of herself looking glamorous at various events around town. In several of the recent pictures, I could see Tyler in the background, always positioned just close enough to suggest intimacy, without being obvious about it. The workshop door opened, and Sophie appeared, looking nervous. "Jack, we need to talk," she said. "Do we?" I asked, not looking up from my phone. "I saw the boxes by the door. What's that about?" I finally looked at her. She was still beautiful, the same blonde hair and green eyes that had caught my attention 10 years ago at a bar downtown. But there was something different now, something calculating in her expression that I'd been too blind to see before. "Just thought you might want your things where you could find them easily," I said. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I heard your conversation in the bathroom, Sophie. All of it." Her face went white, then red, then white again. "Jack, I can explain. Can you? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you've got everything planned out pretty well already." She stepped into the workshop, closing the door behind her. "It's not what you think." "Really? Because I think my wife is planning to cheat on me tomorrow night with Tyler Grant while I'm working late. I think she's been planning it for a while, and I think her friends are helping her do it. Am I wrong?" Sophie's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Finally, she said, "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. You work all the time. We never talk anymore. I feel like I'm invisible in this marriage." "So you decided to become visible to Tyler instead?" "It's not about Tyler," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "It's about us, about what we've become." I stood up from the workbench and walked over to her. She flinched slightly, as if she expected me to yell or throw something. Instead, I spoke quietly, calmly. "You're just you making excuses." Sophie nodded, tears starting to form in her eyes. "Okay, we can do that." "Good," I said. "Now go tell your friends the planning session is over." After she left, I sat back down on my workbench and opened another beer. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Can't wait to taste you tomorrow night. Hope Jack works late again." I stared at the message for a long moment, then saved the number under Tyler the Idiot in my contacts. Then I opened a new text to Mick. "Rain check on those drinks. I've got some planning of my own to do." As I hit send, I could hear Sophie's friends leaving, their voices carrying across the quiet neighborhood. Marge was still in her garden, now openly staring at our house. By tomorrow morning, half the town would know something was up at the Harlan place. I walked to the workshop window and looked out at the house where I'd thought I was building a life with the woman I loved. The lights were on in the kitchen, and I could see Sophie moving around inside, probably trying to figure out how to salvage her plan. But I was already 3 steps ahead of her. Because while Sophie had been learning how to lie and cheat, I'd been learning how to plan and execute. And tomorrow night was going to be very different from what she was expecting. I raised my beer in a mock toast to the house. "Hope you packed, sweetheart," I said to myself, because this trip is about to get very interesting. I didn't sleep in the house that night. Instead, I made myself a bed on the old couch in the workshop and lay there, listening to the sounds of dairy settling into darkness. Around midnight, I heard Sophie's phone buzzing repeatedly from inside the house. Tyler, probably, wondering why she wasn't responding to his messages. At 6 a.m, I was already up and making coffee when my phone rang. Mick's name appeared on the screen. "You sound like hell," he said without preamble. "Feel worse than I sound," I replied, stepping outside so Sophie wouldn't hear. "What are you doing today?" "Working security at the mall until 3. Why?" "Need a favor. The kind that requires your particular skill set." There was a pause. Mick and I had served 2 tours together in Afghanistan, and we'd developed a kind of shorthand over the years, thinking I want all the facts before I decide anything. "Fair enough. I'll pick you up at 7. We'll do this right." After I hung up, I went back into the house. Sophie was in the kitchen, making breakfast, with the kind of nervous energy that comes from a guilty conscience. She was dressed for work, a tight skirt and low-cut blouse that I hadn't seen her wear in months. "Sleep well?" she asked, not meeting my eyes. "Like a baby," I lied. "You?" "Fine." She poured herself coffee with shaking hands. "Jack, about last night." "We'll talk tonight," I said, "after you've had time to think." She nodded quickly, relief flooding her face. She thought she was off the hook, that she could still go through with her plan and deal with the consequences later. It was almost sad how predictable she'd become. "I'll be working late again," I said, testing her. "Oh, okay. I'll probably go to book club then, like we planned." "Sure. Have fun with your book." After she left for work, I called my assistant manager at the shop and told him I'd be out for the day. Personal business. Then I drove to the diner downtown where Barb Mackenzie had been serving coffee and gossip for 30 years. Barb was a fixture in Derry, a tough, no-nonsense woman in her 60s who'd raised 3 kids on her own and knew everyone's secrets. She also happened to be Mick's aunt, which meant she was family by extension. "You look like 10 miles of bad road," she said when I slid into a booth in the back corner. "Feel like 20, I replied. "Coffee, black." She poured without being asked and sat down across from me. "What's eating you, Jack?" I'd known Barb long enough to know she could be trusted. More importantly, she had her finger on the pulse of everything that happened in this town. If Sophie and Tyler had been carrying on, Barb would know about it. "Hypothetically," I said, "if someone's wife was cheating, how would a person find out for sure?" Barb's eyes narrowed. "We talking about Sophie?" "Hypothetically." "Hypothetically, your wife's been seen at the Riverside Apartments on Elm Street. Hypothetically, she's been there 3 times in the past 2 weeks, always when you're working late. The Riverside Apartments. Upscale, expensive. The kind of place Tyler Grant would live." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Hypothetically, give me the evidence I needed, while also sending a message. It was risky, but risk was something I'd learned to manage in the military. At 3 o'clock, Mick called. "I'm off work. Where do you want to meet?" "Riverside Apartments on Elm. And bring your camera." By 7 that evening, we were positioned in the parking garage of the apartment complex. Mick had changed into dark clothes and brought a professional-grade camera with a telephoto lens. We looked like a couple of private investigators, which wasn't far from the truth. "This feels like old times," Mick said, adjusting his camera settings. "Except the stakes are higher," I replied. At 8:15, Sophie's car pulled into the garage. She was dressed to kill. A red dress I'd never seen before. Heels that made her legs look impossibly long. Makeup applied with the kind of care she used to reserve for our anniversary dinners. She parked 3 spaces away from Tyler's BMW and sat in her car for a moment, checking her appearance in the mirror. Then she got out, smoothed down her dress, and walked toward the elevator. "Jesus, Jack," Mick whispered. "I'm sorry, man." "Just take the pictures," I said. Mick's camera clicked quietly as Sophie disappeared into the elevator. We waited 20 minutes. Then I made my move. Tyler's BMW was beautiful. Midnight blue, leather interior, the kind of car that screamed, "Look at me." It was also about to become significantly less beautiful. I pulled out my pocket knife and knelt beside the front tire. The blade slid into the rubber with a satisfying hiss, and air began to escape slowly. I moved to the rear tire, then around to the other side. 4 tires, 4 slow leaks. By the time Tyler and Sophie came down for their romantic departure, his car would be sitting on its rims. But I wasn't done yet. I pulled out a piece of paper I'd prepared earlier and tucked it under the windshield wiper. "Hope you can perform better than your car. A concerned neighbor." Mick was grinning when I got back to our hiding spot. "That's cold, man. I like it." We waited another hour before Sophie and Tyler emerged from the elevator. They were laughing. The population went to drink away their problems. "So what's the next move?" Mick asked over a beer. "Now, I go home and have a conversation with my wife." "You going to tell her you know?" "Not yet. I want to see how far she's willing to take this lie. I got home around 11 to find Sophie already in bed, pretending to be asleep. She was wearing the same red dress, wrinkled now, and her makeup was smudged. She smelled like Tyler's cologne. I sat down on the edge of the bed. "How was book club?" She opened her eyes, trying to look sleepy and innocent. "It was good. We had a great discussion about the book." "What book was that again?" A pause. "The one about second chances." "Right. What happened in it?" Another pause, longer this time. "The woman. She realized she was making a mistake. She went back to her husband." "Happy ending, then?" "Yes. Very happy." I stood up and walked to the dresser where I'd left my phone. "That's funny, because I got a text tonight. From Tyler." Sophie sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. "What?" I showed her the screen, where Tyler's message from the night before was still displayed. "Can't wait to taste you tomorrow night." "Jack, I can explain. Can you? Because I'm really curious how you're going to explain why Tyler Grant is texting my wife about tasting her." Sophie's face crumpled. "It's not what it looks like." "Really? Because it looks like my wife spent the evening at Tyler's apartment while lying to me about book club." "How do you—" She stopped herself, but it was too late. "How do I know?" "Because I followed you, Sophie. I watched you walk into that building. I watched Tyler's car get towed because someone let the air out of his tires. I watched you come home wearing a dress I've never seen before, smelling like another man's cologne." She started crying then. Big, dramatic tears that might have moved me a month ago. Now they just made me angry. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "It just happened. I didn't plan it." "Bullshit. You planned it yesterday in the bathroom with your friends. You've been planning it for—" "Towed tonight," she said, without thinking, then immediately looked like she wanted to take it back. "Did it? How would you know that?" Sophie realized she'd just confirmed everything I'd accused her of. She sank down onto the bed, defeat written across her face. "I'll give you until tomorrow morning to get your things," I said. "After that, the locks get changed." I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. "Oh, and Sophie? Next time you want to cheat on your husband, you might want to make sure your friends aren't the type to post everything on social media." Nina's Instagram story was very enlightening. It was a lie. Nina hadn't posted anything about the affair. But Sophie didn't know that. She just stared at me with horror as she realized how public her private business was about to become. I slept in the workshop again that night, but this time it felt like a choice instead of an exile. Tomorrow, I would start the process of untangling 10 years of marriage. Tonight, I would plan my next move, because Tyler Grant and my wife thought they were playing games with a stupid, trusting husband. They were about to learn that I was neither stupid nor trusting, and I was much better at games than they were. Sophie was gone when I woke up the next morning, along with most of her clothes and personal belongings. She'd left her wedding ring on the kitchen counter, next to a note that said, "I'm sorry it came to this." I picked up the ring and examined it in the morning light. 2 carats, flawless cut. Cost me 3 months' salary when I bought it. Now it felt like evidence of my own stupidity. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This isn't over, asshole. Tyler." I saved the number and replied, "You're right. It's just getting started." Within an hour, my phone was ringing. Mick's voice was tight with concern. "Jack, you need to get down here. Sophie's at the diner with her mother, and they're making a scene." Mrs. Patricia Sweeney was a force of nature. 60 years old, 5 feet of pure judgment wrapped in expensive clothes and righteous indignation. She'd never liked me, had made it clear from day one that she thought her daughter was settling for a blue-collar mechanic when she could have had a lawyer or a doctor. I found them at a corner booth, Maine. The diner had gone quiet. Everyone was listening now, and Mrs. Sweeney realized it. Her face flushed red. "Lower your voice," she whispered. "Why?" Afraid people will find out what your daughter's been up to? Sophie grabbed my hand across the table. Jack, please. Can we talk about this privately? I looked down at her hand on mine. Her nails were perfectly manicured, painted the same red as the dress she'd worn to Tyler's apartment. I pulled my hand away. You had your chance for private conversations. You chose to have them with Tyler instead. That's enough, Mrs. Sweeney snapped. Sophie made a mistake, but that doesn't give you the right to humiliate her publicly. I'm not humiliating anyone. I'm just stating facts. Barb appeared at our table with fresh coffee. Everything okay here? Fine, I said. Just a family discussion about honesty and consequences. Sophie's phone buzzed on the table. Tyler's name appeared on the screen, and she quickly declined the call. But not quickly enough. Trouble in paradise? I asked. He's upset about his car, she admitted. I bet he is. 4 new tires gets expensive. Mrs. Sweeney's eyes narrowed. You vandalized his property? I didn't vandalize anything. I simply let some air out of his tires. Completely legal. You're insane, Sophie said. No, I'm thorough. There's a difference. My phone buzzed with a text from Nina. OMG, is it true about Sophie and Tyler? The whole town is talking. I showed Sophie the screen. Looks like word is getting out. Sophie's face went white. You told people? I didn't have to. Small towns have their own communication network. It was true. By now, half of Derry knew something was happening with the Harlans. Marge had probably seen Sophie leaving with suitcases. The tow truck driver had probably mentioned Tyler's car. Barb had witnessed the diner confrontation. In a place like Derry, secrets lasted about as long as fresh snow. Mrs. Sweeney stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. Sophie, you're coming home with me until we can sort this out legally. Actually, I said, she's welcome to stay with Tyler. I hear he's got a nice place. Mechanical work. But every few minutes, my phone would buzz with a new message. Friends offering support, acquaintances fishing for details, strangers who'd heard rumors and wanted confirmation. Around 3 o'clock, Tyler showed up. He looked different in daylight, smaller somehow, less impressive without the BMW and the expensive clothes. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, and there were dark circles under his eyes. We need to talk, he said. I wiped my hands on a shop rag and looked at him. Do we? This has gone far enough. Sophie's a wreck. Her mother's threatening lawsuits, and my car, your car is fine. 4 new tires, good as new. You cost me $800. You cost me 10 years of marriage. I'd say you got off cheap. Tyler stepped closer, trying to use his height advantage to intimidate me. You think you're tough because you were in the military? I think I'm smart because I know when someone's trying to threaten me. I'm not threatening you. I'm trying to have a civilized conversation. About what? About how you've been sleeping with my wife? About how you planned it while I was working to pay for the house she was cheating in? It wasn't like that. Really? What was it like? Tyler ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized from watching him at town events. It was his nervous tell, the thing he did when he was out of his depth. Look, Sophie and we connected. She was unhappy, lonely. You were always working. So you decided to help her feel less lonely. She needed someone who understood her. And you understood her need to lie to her husband and sneak around behind his back? You don't get it. Sophie's special. She deserves better than... He gestured around the shop. This. I set down the shop rag and looked at him carefully. Better than what, exactly? Better than being married to a mechanic who comes home covered in grease every night? There it was. The truth beneath all the noble talk about connection and understanding. Tyler thought he was better than me, and he thought Sophie deserved better too. You know what's funny? I said. Sophie used to love that I worked with my hands. She used to say it was going to think very carefully about whether Sophie is worth all the drama she's about to bring into your life. And if I don't, then you'll find out that letting the air out of your tires was just the opening act. Tyler stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked away. Through the shop window, I watched him get into a rental car. His BMW was apparently still in the shop getting new tires. That evening, I drove to O'Malley's for a beer and found the place buzzing with conversation. The moment I walked in, the noise level dropped noticeably. Everyone was looking at me, some with sympathy, others with curiosity, a few with the kind of anticipation that comes from knowing you're about to witness drama. I ordered a beer and sat at the bar, ignoring the stares and whispered conversations. After a few minutes, people went back to their own business, but I could feel the tension in the room like electricity before a storm. Around 9 o'clock, Sophie walked in with Liz and Nina. They were dressed for a night out, but there was something desperate about their appearance, like they were trying too hard to look like they were having fun. Sophie saw me immediately and froze. Liz whispered something in her ear, and Nina started recording with her phone, because of course she did. They found a table across the room, but the bar wasn't big enough for us to avoid each other completely. Every few minutes, I'd catch Sophie looking at me, her expression a mixture of guilt, anger, and something that might have been regret. Around 10, Tyler showed up. He scanned the room, saw me at the bar, saw Sophie at her table, and hesitated in the doorway like he was trying to decide whether to stay or go. The decision was made for him when Sophie waved him over to their table. He walked across the room with a kind of forced confidence that fooled no one and sat down next to my wife. The entire bar was watching now. This was better than cable television. I finished my beer, left a 20 on the bar, and walked toward the door. As I passed their table, I stopped and looked down at the four of them. "Evening, ladies." "Tyler." "Jack," Sophie said quietly. "Hope you're all having a good time. You look like you're celebrating something." Liz spoke up, her voice sharp with alcohol and attitude. "We're celebrating Sophie's freedom from a controlling husband." "Freedom," I repeated. "That's one way to put it." I looked. "Your wedding album." Seemed appropriate. Sophie's face crumpled, but I was already walking away. Behind me, I could hear Liz's voice, loud enough for the whole bar to hear. "He's such an asshole. You're better off without him." Maybe she was right. Maybe Sophie was better off without me. But as I walked out into the cool night air, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. Because Tyler and Sophie thought they'd won something. They thought they'd gotten away with their deception, that the worst consequence would be an awkward divorce and some small-town gossip. They had no idea what was coming next. The next morning brought rain and a phone call from my lawyer. Word had gotten back to him about the situation. In a town like Derry, lawyers heard about marital problems before the spouses did sometimes. "Jack, I need you to be smart about this," David Chen said over the phone. "I know you're angry, but don't do anything that could hurt you in the divorce proceedings." "Like what?" "Like harassing Tyler Grant. I heard about the tire incident." "That was just a prank." "That was property damage, and if he decides to press charges, it could complicate things." I understood what David was saying, but he didn't understand what I was dealing with. Sophie and Tyler weren't just cheating, they were flaunting it, making me look like a fool in front of the entire town. "What about the adultery?" I asked. "Doesn't that count for something?" "It does, but only if you can prove it. And even then, Maine is a no-fault divorce state. The judge cares more about equitable distribution than moral failings." "So she gets to cheat and still gets half of everything?" "Potentially, yes, unless there are extenuating circumstances." After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at the rain and thinking about extenuating circumstances. What I needed was evidence, not just of the affair, but of something that would give me leverage in the divorce. My phone buzzed with a text from Mick. "You need to see this." 20 minutes later, I was at his apartment downtown, looking at his laptop screen. He'd been monitoring social media, and what he'd found was interesting. "Look at this," he said, pointing to Nina's Instagram account. "She's been posting about Sophie and Tyler for weeks, was performing for the camera." "There's more," Mick said, clicking to another account. "Liz has been posting about real estate deals, and guess whose name keeps coming up?" "Tyler Grant." Liz had been promoting Tyler's business, sharing his listings, even posting photos from what looked like private dinners and client events. They're all connected, I realized. This isn't just about Sophie cheating. This is about her entire social circle enabling it. "Gets better," Mick said. "Look at this." He showed me a post from Tyler's Instagram account, a photo of an expensive watch with the caption, "Sometimes you have to invest in yourself." The timestamp was from 2 weeks ago, right around the time Sophie had started her affair. "You think Sophie bought him that watch?" I asked. "I think it's worth finding out, because if she did, she used joint funds to buy gifts for her boyfriend while lying to her husband. That would be an extenuating circumstance. Using marital assets to fund an affair was something even a no-fault divorce judge would frown upon." "I need to get into our bank records," I said. "Already ahead of you." Mick pulled up another window on his laptop. "Nina works at First National, remember? She's been posting about her job, including photos from inside the bank." "You think she gave Sophie access to information she shouldn't have?" "I think Nina's been helping Sophie hide money. Look at this post from last month." It was a photo of Nina and Sophie at lunch with the caption, "Helping my girl plan for her future. #financial independence. #new year, new me." Financial independence, I repeated. She's been planning to leave me for months, and her friends have been helping her do it. I felt something cold and calculating settle in my chest. This wasn't just adultery. It was conspiracy. Sophie and her friends had been planning my humiliation while pretending to be concerned about my marriage. "What do you want to do?" Mick asked. "I want to set a trap." That evening, I texted Sophie from a burner phone I'd bought that afternoon. "Jack's working late again. Meet me at the old mill at 10. We need to talk about our future. P." The old paper mill had been abandoned for years, sitting on the edge of town like a monument to Derry's industrial past. Arrived. He parked next to Sophie's car and got out, looking around nervously. The mill at night was an intimidating place, all shadows and broken windows and the sound of wind through rusted metal. "Sophie?" he called out. "Over here," she replied from somewhere inside the building. Tyler walked toward her voice and I gave Mick the signal. We moved quickly and quietly, using skills we'd learned in the military to approach without being detected. We found them in what used to be the mill's main production floor, a cavernous space filled with broken machinery and debris. Sophie was sitting on an old conveyor belt, Tyler standing in front of her with his hands on her waist. "This is crazy," Tyler was saying. "Meeting here like this." "I know, but I needed to see you. Jack's been acting strange, and I think he suspects something." "Maybe we should cool it for a while." "Cool it?" Sophie's voice rose. "Tyler, I left my husband for you. I'm staying at my mother's house because of you. Don't you dare talk about cooling it." "I didn't ask you to leave him." "You didn't have to ask. I did it because I love you." Tyler stepped back from her. "Sophie, I care about you, but this is moving too fast." "Too fast? We've been planning this for months." "You've been planning it. I was just enjoying the moment." I could see Sophie's face in the dim light, filtering through the broken windows. She looked like she'd been slapped. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe we should think about what we really want here. I want you. I want us." Tyler ran his hand through his hair. That nervous gesture again. "Sophie, you're married. This whole situation is complicated. I'm getting divorced. It doesn't have to be complicated." "But it is complicated. Your husband is crazy. He vandalized my car. He's been following us. He's turning the whole town against you. He's just angry. Once the divorce is final, what? I'm supposed to marry you? Take on all your baggage, deal with your crazy ex-husband for the rest of my life?" Sophie stood up from the conveyor belt. "Is that what you think I am?" "Here." Said he wanted to talk about his relationship with my wife. Tyler's face went white. "I didn't send you any text." "Really? Because I've got it right here on my phone." I showed them the screen, which displayed the message I'd sent to myself from the burner phone. "Looks like your number to me." "That's impossible. I never—" Tyler stopped, realization dawning on his face. "You set this up." "Did I? Because it looks to me like you lured my wife to an abandoned building for a secret meeting. That's pretty suspicious behavior." Sophie was looking back and forth between us, trying to understand what was happening. Tyler, did you send Jack a message? No, he's lying. Am I? Because I've got witnesses who saw you arrive here tonight. I've got photos of you entering the building, and I've got a recording of the conversation you just had with my wife. It was a bluff. We hadn't recorded anything, but Tyler didn't know that. You're insane, Tyler said. Maybe, but I'm not the one who's been sneaking around with another man's wife. Mick stepped out of the shadows then, and Tyler nearly jumped out of his skin. Evening, folks, Mick said pleasantly. Hope we're not interrupting anything important. Who the hell is that? Tyler demanded. That's my friend Mick. He's been helping me document your relationship with Sophie, for the divorce proceedings, you understand. Sophie found her voice. Jack, you can't do this. This is harassment. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like I caught my wife and her boyfriend having a secret meeting in an abandoned building. That's not harassment, that's evidence. Evidence of what? Conspiracy, fraud, using marital assets to fund an extramarital affair. I looked directly at Tyler. How much did that watch cost, by the way? The one Sophie bought you with our joint credit card? Tyler's hand went instinctively to his wrist, where the expensive watch caught the moonlight. I don't know what you're talking about, he said. Sure you do. Omega Seamaster, about $3,000. Sophie charged it to our Visa 2 weeks ago. I've got the receipt. Sophie's face went pale. How did you... All those hotel rooms, all those little gifts she's been showering you with for months. Tyler stopped moving toward the exit. Hotel rooms? I smiled. Oh, Sophie didn't tell you? I've been tracking our credit card statements. The Riverside Inn, the Hampton downtown, that bed and breakfast in Portland. Hundreds of dollars in charges I didn't make. Sophie was crying now, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage and frustration. You had no right to spy on me, she said. I had every right. You're my wife, and you were stealing from me to fund your affair. I wasn't stealing. What would you call it? Because I can tell you what a judge will call it. Dissipation of marital assets. It's grounds for awarding me a larger share of our property in the divorce. Tyler had heard enough. I'm out of here, he said, and started walking quickly toward the exit. Tyler, wait! Sophie called after him. But Tyler was done. He'd gotten what he wanted from Sophie, and now that there were consequences, he was cutting his losses. Sophie ran after him, her heels clicking on the concrete floor. Tyler, please! Don't leave me like this. Find your own way home, Tyler called back without stopping. A minute later, we heard his car start and drive away, leaving Sophie stranded at the mill with me and Mick. She walked back toward us slowly, her shoulders slumped in defeat. He's gone, she said, as if she couldn't quite believe it. Did you really think he'd stick around once things got complicated? I asked. He said he cared about me. He cared about what you could do for him, the expensive gifts, the hotel rooms, the thrill of sneaking around. But he never cared about you. Sophie looked at me with something that might have been recognition. And you did? I married you, didn't I? You married who you thought I was. But this is who I really am, Jack. This is who I've always been. Maybe she was right. Maybe the Sophie I'd fallen in love with had never really existed. Maybe she'd been performing for me, the same way she'd been performing for Tyler. Come on, I said. I'll give you a ride home. To my mother's house, you mean? To wherever you're staying. We walked out of the mill together, leaving behind the scene of Tyler's betrayal and Sophie's humiliation. But I knew this wasn't the control the narrative. She wanted witnesses to see her making an effort to save our marriage. Probably so she could tell everyone later that she'd tried, but I was too stubborn to forgive her. Fine, I said. 8 o'clock. I spent the afternoon preparing. If Sophie wanted a public performance, I'd give her one she'd never forget. I arrived at O'Malley's early and took a seat at the bar where I could see the entire room. The place was busy for a weeknight. Half the town seemed to be there, probably hoping to witness the next chapter in the Harlan marriage drama. Sophie arrived at exactly 8 o'clock, flanked by Liz and Nina like bodyguards. She was dressed conservatively. A simple black dress, minimal makeup, her hair pulled back in a way that made her look younger and more vulnerable. It was a calculated choice, designed to make her look like the wronged party. They found a table in the center of the room, and Sophie waved me over. I finished my beer and walked across the bar, aware that every conversation had stopped, and every eye was on us. "Jack," Sophie said as I sat down, "thank you for coming." Wouldn't miss it. Liz and Nina were flanking her like lawyers, their expressions serious and supportive. Nina had her phone out, probably ready to document whatever happened next. "I want to apologize," Sophie began, her voice loud enough to carry to nearby tables. "I made mistakes, and I hurt you. I want to try to make things right." "Mistakes," I repeated. "Is that what we're calling it?" "I had an affair. I was wrong. And I'm sorry." The bar was completely silent now. Even the bartender had stopped wiping glasses to listen. "Are you? Sorry, I mean." "Yes. I realize now that I was confused, that I was looking for something that was already right in front of me." It was a good performance. She sounded sincere, remorseful, like a woman who genuinely learned from her mistakes. If I didn't know better, I might have believed her. "What about Tyler?" Sophie's composure flickered for just a moment of shock and betrayal. Apparently they hadn't known about the watch. "Sophie," Liz said quietly, "you didn't tell us about any watch." "Because it's not important," Sophie said quickly. "It was just..." "Just what?" I interrupted. "Just theft? Because that's what it's called when you use joint funds without your spouse's knowledge." I wasn't thinking clearly. "No, you were thinking very clearly. You were planning to leave me, and you wanted to make sure Tyler had reasons to stick around." Sophie's carefully constructed facade was cracking. The vulnerable, apologetic wife was disappearing, replaced by the calculating woman I'd discovered in our bathroom. "You don't understand," she said. "The marriage was over anyway. We hadn't been happy for months." "So you decided to help yourself to our savings account?" "It was $3,000. It was our $3,000. Money I earned working 60-hour weeks while you were planning your exit strategy." The crowd was riveted now. This was better than any soap opera. "Tell them about the hotel rooms," I continued. "The Riverside Inn, the Hampton downtown. How much did those cost?" Sophie was crying now, but they were tears of frustration, not remorse. "You're trying to humiliate me." "I'm trying to tell the truth, something you seem to have forgotten how to do." Nina was still recording, but her expression had changed. She was looking at Sophie like she was seeing her clearly for the first time. "Sophie," Nina said slowly, "you told us Jack was controlling, that he monitored your spending." "He did. But if he was monitoring your spending, how did you manage to spend thousands of dollars without him knowing?" Sophie realized she'd been caught in another lie. I had my own account. Funded with money from our joint account," I added. "Money you transferred without telling me." Liz was staring at Sophie with dawning horror. "My God, Sophie, what else haven't you told us?" "Nothing. I told you everything." "Did you? Because it sounds like you've been lying to everyone. Your husband, your friends, probably yourself." Sophie turned on Liz with sudden fury. "Don't you dare judge me. You're the one who introduced me to Tyler." "I introduced you at a business event. I didn't tell you to have money on Tyler. But you know what? I don't regret it. Because for the first time in years, someone made me feel alive." The bar was completely silent. Even the music had stopped. "Jack works all the time," Sophie continued. "He comes home covered in grease. He falls asleep watching TV. He hasn't taken me anywhere nice in months. Tyler made me feel special, made me feel wanted." "Tyler made you feel like a fool," I said quietly. "At least he made me feel something." "Did he? Because from what I saw at the mill, Tyler was ready to dump you the minute things got complicated." Sophie's face crumpled. "That's not true. Isn't it? Where is he now, Sophie? Why isn't he here supporting you through this difficult conversation?" Sophie looked around the bar desperately, as if Tyler might materialize to defend her, but of course he wasn't there. He'd made it clear that he was done with her. He's dealing with his own issues. His own issues being that he doesn't want to be associated with a married woman who steals from her husband. I didn't steal. What would you call it? Sophie sat back down heavily, the fight going out of her. I just wanted to be happy. At my expense, literally. Liz and Nina were gathering their purses, clearly ready to leave. The revelation about the money had changed everything for them. Sophie, Liz said coldly, I think you should come with us. Why? So you can lecture me some more? So we can figure out how to clean up this mess you've made. I don't need you to clean up anything for me. Nina laughed bitterly. Really? Because from where I'm sitting, you need all the help you can get. You know what? Sophie stood up again, her voice rising. I'm tired of everyone judging me. I made choices, and I'm not going to apologize for them anymore. Even the choice to steal from your husband? Someone called out from across the bar. Sophie whirled around to face the crowd. It wasn't stealing. It was my money too. Was it? I asked. Because I earned it while you were planning your affair. I contributed to this marriage. How? By lying to me for months? By making me look like a fool in front of the entire town? By trying to make the best of a bad situation. The bad situation being married to me? Sophie, me. You loved the idea of me. The steady paycheck, the house, the respectability. But you never loved the actual me. That's not true, isn't it? Because the moment someone more exciting came along, you were ready to throw away 10 years of marriage. Sophie was crying again, but I could see the calculation behind her tears. She was trying to figure out how to salvage the situation, how to make herself look like the victim. I did love you, she said quietly. I still do. No, you don't. You love the security I provided, but you don't love me enough to be faithful, and you don't respect me enough to be honest. I stood up and pulled out my wallet, leaving $40 on the table, enough to cover drinks for everyone. This is for the show, I announced to the bar. Thanks for being such a great audience. As I walked toward the door, Sophie called after me. Jack, wait! We can work this out. I stopped and turned back to her. No, Sophie, we can't. Because working things out requires trust, and you destroyed that months ago. I can change. Maybe you can, but not with me. I walked out of O'Malley's into the cool night air, leaving behind the wreckage of my marriage and my wife's reputation. Behind me, I could hear Sophie arguing with Liz and Nina, their friendship apparently another casualty of her deception. My phone buzzed with a text from Mick. Saw the whole thing. You okay? I typed back, never better. And for the first time in months, that was actually true. Because I wasn't the fool anymore. I wasn't the guy who didn't know his wife was cheating. I wasn't the victim of Sophie's games. I was the man who'd exposed the truth, who'd taken control of his own story, who'd refused to be anyone's fool ever again. Sophie could keep Tyler if she could get him back. She could keep her friends if they'd still have her. She could keep her victim narrative if anyone would still believe it. But she couldn't keep me. And she couldn't keep pretending that her choices didn't have consequences. As I drove home through the quiet streets of Derry, I thought about the house that was now